Okay. So come to sit comfortably. I've got my bolster underneath me so that I'm just propping myself up a little bit higher. This just makes a little bit more space for the hips. It's a little bit less difficult for the knees. I need to put you on mute, don't I? I forgot about that one. Good. Okay. I think we're done now. I think I'm ready to go. Okay. So come and take a seat, and whether that's a cross-legged seat or a kneeling seat, remember we practiced Virasana, hero pose, on Tuesday night in our practice there. So the bolster is quite a nice way to sit with for hero, because you can put it long ways and just let your sit bones kind of catch the end of the bolster. And what this does is it allows you to sit up really nice and long and spacious into the sides of your body, and prevents you from collapsing into the knees and into the hips essentially. But I don't mind how you sit, you know the score. If you come to my class, I don't mind. It's you know, I'd much rather that you sat comfortably, and that's our priority all of the time, is to find that balance of being able to do something, but also to be comfortable in what we are doing. And you know, I get this quite a lot with some of the, especially new people that come to the classes that I teach, and they're like, oh, it's a bit hard going, or really, is that really beginnery stuff? And a lot of the time I say to them something that my teacher says to me. It's, you know, yoga is meant to be fun, but it's not necessarily meant to be easy. Okay, that's not why we're here, is it? We're here to put ourselves through different aspects of challenge, and to see how we cope with those challenges, and also to enable us to progress. Even if we're doing something as simple and as straightforward as sitting, there's always something that we can explore or learn about ourselves in even the most basic of poses. And that's all it means to become an advanced practitioner, is to just keep exploring the different hidden, perhaps, depths of individual aspects of the practice, whether it be a pose, whether it be your breath, whether it be how you maintain your focus, your steadiness through it all. So yeah, it doesn't just, you know, to be an advanced practitioner doesn't mean that you can headstand or handstand or do wheel pose, although those sorts of things are nice and they do begin to happen or begin to become more accessible the more regularly you practice, as you're probably finding. You know, lots of you are practicing much more regularly than perhaps you might ordinarily do, and you will notice that very quickly your body starts to change, your outlook on things start to change, and you then, if you don't practice, you begin to miss your practice, or miss getting onto your mat, missing that opportunity for some space or some stillness or some movement for your body. Anyway, I can chat all night long about this, but let's just sit for a moment. So take your fingertips to the floor next to you, and we'll do 3 breaths. Breathing in, sweeping the arms out wide and bringing the palms together above the top of your head, and then breathing out to bring the hands down in front of the heart space. And let's do this twice more. Maybe close your eyes and just begin to settle into your practice. This also might be an opportunity, if you have one of the playlists, or if you're on Spotify and you want to link with my account, it's called Seeking Stillness, and you can see some of the playlists that I have there. Let's do one more of these. One more inhale, one more exhale. And at the end of your exhale, just resting your hands in Anjali Mudra in front of your heart. And so the palms lightly press, but keep the center of your palm spacious. Fingertips together. Just breathe in and breathe out. The space inside the center of the palms is said to represent the space inside your heart. And you may well feel a little bit of heat in the center of your palms as the palms press lightly against one another. And this heat could be considered to be the little flame of light, a little candle that burns brightly in your heart center. Now, in this morning's practice, I asked everyone to think about some things that they felt grateful for, some things that they had woken up this morning and thought, yeah, brilliant, that's a good thing. I'm really happy that that's going to happen today, or I'm going to make that happen. And so I want you now to reflect on your day and think about 3 things that have happened today that have maybe made you smile. Perhaps they've solved a problem for you. Perhaps you've got one of those jobs done off of your never-ending list of things to do. Just have a think about 3 things that you feel grateful for today. And then just steadying the breath, breathing in and out, and letting the breath come evenly and smoothly. Beginning to feel that the spine is releasing any tightness or tension just through this effort of sitting still. Allow the shoulders to begin to sink down and the jaw begin to soften. And it's as though the expression on your face is beginning to release as well. There's nowhere else that we need to be, nowhere else to go. We are blessed with being able to practice in the comfort of our own homes. How wonderful is that? And we're together in our Sangha, our community, keeping each other going, keeping each other connected, staying as part of our little yoga community. All right. So after this exhalation, just letting your hands drop into your lap. Maybe letting your chin fall towards your chest to lengthen the back of the neck and release the shoulders even more. And then with the face pointing downwards, just gently flutter the eyelids open and begin to lift your head. Okay, nice one everyone. All right, so our first pose tonight is lying down. And this is a lovely one because what we're going to do is you're going to take your yoga strap and you are going to make the biggest loop that your strap will take. Now, so this pink strap is very long. In fact, this is probably too big a loop for me because my legs aren't particularly long. What you're going to do, so you want to have the buckle somewhere so that you can adjust the loop a bit. So this is why Angela was saying if this doesn't work out for you, I'll give you something else to do. And then what you're going to do, so most of you have practiced this with me before, is it's going to go around the ball of one foot. You are going to lie down, that foot's going to go in the air, and the other end of the strap is going to tuck behind your head. Now, obviously you're going to have your head down low and it's got to be fairly tight, so you can see that mine isn't tight enough. I need to tighten it. And the strap needs to be on the base of your skull. This is not on the neck, okay? So this is not on the vertebra of the neck. Adjust it if you need to. You want to feel a bit of a mild stretch along the back of your leg. And you want to feel a stretch on the back of the neck. So can you see, if you're not sure what to do, you're going to look a bit like this. So one leg is straight up in the air, the back of the head is cradled by the strap, and this should feel quite pleasant, okay? So it might be that if you are struggling with this, your loop is probably too big. And I'm saying that from experience. However, there is obviously the opposite, which is if your loop is, and if your knee is bent and you're struggling to get your foot into the strap, for instance, then just be mindful of that. If you can get to a position where you can let go of the strap with your hands and let your arms rest out by your side. Now, your opposite leg, your free leg, can either remain bent with the foot on the floor, or you can slide the leg away from you for a slightly stronger variation. And you might find that that gives you a little bit more of a, if you like, a pivot point. So it helps you to kind of hang in the cradle that this is creating. So you've got your head being held. There's a sort of nice stretch for the back of the neck, and maybe a release is going to be happening here. And that's why you need to let the arms go. So turn the palms up towards the ceiling, let the fingers curl, and you're looking for this interplay between a bit of downward pressure through the back of your head as the head hangs heavy, but also a little bit of upward or away from you movement through the ball of the foot. And there's a little bit of interplay between the two. Okay, you don't want to be working too hard here because that's not the nature of yin. But this is a very lovely, very restorative, balancing posture. And I understand, I appreciate that if you have been sitting at a desk a lot today, if you've had your head forwards, you might be thinking, well, why do I want to be doing this? But actually, you can release some of the tension that may well be being held in the big, strong muscles at the back of the neck and down into the shoulders. So maybe close your eyes and just focus for the next maybe 2 minutes. We'll stay here for 2 more minutes, and then we'll do the other side. We'll do the other leg for about 3 minutes. And I want you to focus on your breathing, please. So the breath is even and smooth and steady. And a soft ujjayi breath is actually very, very welcome here. We've talked a lot this week because it was Earth Day yesterday. We made the focus of our practice for this week about the earth. And so in our yin practices today and on Sunday and potentially tomorrow, so if you want to practice yin tomorrow 8 till 10, then you need to let me know, because I won't run the class otherwise if I don't know that you're coming. But nevertheless, it's all about the earth. And when we talk about the earth within yin, we're talking about the element of the earth. So the earth element as referenced by traditional Chinese medicine. Traditionally, we practice a lot of earth poses around the autumn, late summer, that sort of time. However, we're thinking a lot about the earth. We think a lot about the liver in Chinese medicine in the springtime because we watch the earth producing new life, all the shoots and the blossom on the trees and the trees becoming covered with leaves again, and everything starts to wake up out of its hibernation, which is just gorgeous. But the earth is what has provided this. The earth is the foundation, the solid, firm terra firma under our feet, but also the nourishment of the earth. And so thinking about the nourishment that comes from the earth is the way we want to think about it within our bodies. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a sec. Okay, so I want you to hold the strap with both hands. You're going to keep it cradling your head. You're going to bend your other knee, take the foot up into the air and into the loop of the strap and swap over. Okay, so the head is going to stay cradled. Find your sweet spot, find your ability to sink. And I really want you to be heavy in the head. You're creating a little bit of a double chin going on here, and maybe sliding that other leg away from you and just going back into this nice kind of releasing, softening, yielding position. And you might be enjoying the sensation of the back of the pelvis or the lower back, just gently pressing into the earth. And so when we think about the element of earth in our yin yoga, in traditional Chinese medicine, we think about the organs of the spleen and the stomach and the energy associated with them. So quite literally, the spleen and the stomach, the energy of those, they govern transformation and transportation. So their job is to take all of the goodness from the food, from whatever we put into our bodies, and they transform it into the right energy that is necessary to fuel the blood, to support the bones, support the muscles. All the functions of the body need the energy that we put in. So whether that comes from the water or the fluid that we put in, that's governed by the kidneys, or the food that we eat that's governed by the spleen and the stomach. The spleen and the stomach's job is to get it to the places that it needs to be. Now, if you have been feeling tired, really sluggish, maybe your legs have been aching recently, maybe your lower back, maybe you're just finding it hard to get going, especially first thing in the morning. All of these are just signs that the spleen energy, so not necessarily the organ, nothing wrong with the organ, but the spleen's energy is a little bit deficient. And that's simply because it's having to work really hard at the moment. So what do we do? What do we do to support it? Firstly, we maybe avoid eating certain foods. For instance, spicy foods really deplete from the spleen's energy. The spleen, believe it or not, likes sweet food. So there's your cue to eat lots of fruits and things that are sweet and kind of tasty, because that makes the spleen feel nice. Okay, so remember, we want to put nourishing things into our bodies rather than things like just empty sugars or empty calories. I don't mean that. So have a think about what it is that you like to eat that's sweet, and food that can nourish that, because you can have there's lots of sweet vegetables, isn't there? Think about your carrots and your parsnips and those sorts of things. All right, so I'm going to take another couple of breaths here. Really let the head hang heavy and just see whether you can release any more tension from the back of the neck and the shoulders just for these last few breaths. Okay. So super well done, everybody. So to come out of this quite nicely, quite simply, hold on to the strap, release your head to put your head down first, and then you can take the strap away from the foot and maybe just rest down. Let the legs remain long, let the head sink down and settle. Appreciate any differences, any changes that have happened within you immediately after doing that pose. So a really nice go-to pose, one of the ones that you want to have, if you like, in your toolbox of poses for just helping you unwind from stressful or busy days. And sometimes that's what we want in our yin practice. You don't have to do very much, but just a nice selection of a few really beautiful poses that are going to nourish us from outside and in. Okay, so if you bend your knees and roll yourself over to one side, and I'm hoping you've all got a blanket or a towel or something like that you can roll up into a little bit of a sausage. If, for instance, you have a spare yoga mat, you could use that instead. A bolster here is okay, but probably too big for the purpose that we want it for. And we are simply going to lay over this. So we're going to, we've kind of curled, we've flexed the neck and the spine forwards, and now we're going to work a little bit lower into the thoracics, and we're going to just open up some space across the thoracic spine. So you are going to lay over this. This is going to be roughly around where the bra strap goes. The arms need to be on the floor, but above the rolled up mat, rolled up blanket. The head's going to be on the floor. Maybe the knees start off with being bent, or eventually they come out to being straight. I've got my arms in a sort of cactus position. That's partly because the wall, I'm very close to the wall here. So if you want your arms wide, long, out to the sides, that's fine. If you want your arms up and alongside your ears or wrapped loosely around the top of your head, that too is fine. And this is a wonderful position, and you can if you're lying on your rolled up blanket and you're thinking that's not quite enough, then you could lie on a brick, and some of you will be familiar with that because we do that at the start of classes fairly often. So you could, if you want a bit of extra height, lie on a yoga brick instead. However, we are not looking to force the body here into very extreme shapes. We are looking to really create a counter position for perhaps some of our postural habits that we are kind of prone to doing, which is curling the shoulders forwards. And so here, even though it might feel like quite a subtle, mild back bend, you've nonetheless got this little bit of opening for the chest, which I want you to explore now as you breathe. And this is really key to our yoga practice, to our yin practice. And it very much is key to us getting into our bodies. It's trying to stay out of the thinking mind, and I call this a lot the stories, okay? Because our mind is always full of stories, of journeys. It might be that we journey into the past and remember stories of things that have happened. And I'm brilliant at this. I can do this all day long, go over and over the same things in my head, and I have to work really hard to kind of turn that off. Or it might be that you're planning for the future, or you've got things that are on your mind that you can't help but think over, think through. And what we need to do is we need to leave those stories at the door. So it's quite a lovely metaphor to have if you visualize for yourself a really beautiful box that just sits outside the door of the room that you are currently in. And with your eyes closed now, just visualize any of those thoughts, any of those stories that are on your mind, whether it's the past or the future. What is it that is kind of filling your mind up at the moment? And just visualize yourself walking to the door, opening up the lid of this beautiful box that's sitting outside the door, and popping those stories inside of it, putting the lid back on, and then closing the door and lying yourself back down. And so you become present. Those stories are still there, they're going to be waiting for you, but you can go and get them back at the end of your practice. And so for now, just grant yourself the time and the space to be very present. And that's present with your breathing. And all the breathing needs to be is slow. We can explore different breathing styles, and there's thousands potentially that we could do. But ultimately, it is the slowing down of the breath that is going to firstly calm the nervous systems of the body, especially the central nervous system. Secondly, you are going to get out of your mind and into your body. And your body will then start to be able to communicate with you a little bit more clearly. So what I want you to do now, whilst you're lying here in a very kind of gentle, fairly easy pose, I want you to think about where in your body does this feel delicious. And I want you to travel your awareness into that part of your body and just be in the sensation of this deliciousness. Whether it be the weight of your head as it releases and sinks into the mat, whether it be the mild extension for the upper part of your back, or the ability for your body just to lie flat and still and feeling the space and the length in your legs, in your hips. So just enjoy these lovely, gorgeous sensations. Very nice. So you're going to spend a few more breaths here. Stay in the deliciousness, please. And then when you are ready, you're going to think about just gently bending your knees and rolling yourself over to one side and slowly coming around and up to sit. Good. Okay, so our next pose is going to be a forward bend. So you could keep your rolled up blanket in its position, because you might find that it's quite nice to now sit on it. That might be a bit precarious, so if it is, grab a cushion or just release the rolled up and fold it instead. Because we're going to fold forwards, this is not like your Paschimottanasana. So you can round, and I'm going to encourage you to kind of round your spine a bit like this. So to make that easier, you might find that you want to put something underneath the back of your knees. So it could be a rolled up towel, something thick, your bolster, a cushion, that sort of thing. And that could be there, and then you've got that to rest your tummy can rest onto the top of your thighs. You could put your elbows onto your knees and let your head rest into your hands if you like. And never underestimate the effect of the palms on the forehead. It's actually very, very good for the temples, for the frontal lobes of the brain, just this little bit of contact with the palms. You could alternatively, if you want to keep your legs straight because you'd like a bit more of a stretch for your hamstrings, another alternative is to put a cushion or a bolster onto the legs, and then it gives you something to round over. Okay, so we're looking not necessarily for the flexion of the anteversion of the pelvis, but we're looking to create stretch in the posterior ligaments of the spine. So I want you to feel that you are able to get that stretch. You might not need any props at all. You might be really comfortable with just hanging forwards. But I would say that staying in a pose like this for a few minutes, as we will do, you might find that you want something to support your head. So therefore, if you have a brick, if you don't want to use the blanket or the towel or the bolster or anything, a brick on its end in between your legs can be quite a nice thing to come forwards and to rest your forehead on, a bit like this. Okay, so there's always lots of different things to try, but please feel free to just experiment. Remember, we're not striving here into a Paschimottanasana where we're trying to keep our backs nice and long. We are allowing for there to be this curve. And so it's very counterintuitive, because it goes against what we practice in our normal yoga classes. But yes, the benefits of forward folding are that they offer us this opportunity for a bit of introversion, a bit of self-reflection, a bit of quietness. And there's nowhere else to go, is there? Once we're in this forward fold position, we are really very much kind of alone with our own thoughts and our own minds. So keep the thoughts at bay, stay in the breathing aspect of your body. Stay within the sensation of your body. And this time, in comparison to the previous pose, this time I want you to go to the part of your body that is feeling this most intensely. So before we went to where it was delicious and we rested our attention there. And now, if there is somewhere in your body, maybe the back of your legs, maybe it is the forward folding, maybe it's your head hanging forwards, I don't know. But anywhere that is maybe protesting, maybe a part of your body that is having something to say loud and clear. And take all of your awareness to there, and don't resist this sensation. Don't fight it. Just sit with it and allow it to be. Allow it to occur. And breathe. And I think it's always going to be a very interesting exploration if we are able to stay in that place. Stay in that place where there is intensity. Because very often we like intensity when it is associated with good things. But when there is intensity because it is associated with a difficult thing, we run away. That's our tendency. But how does it feel when we sit with it? And are we able to sit there? Are we able to stay in that place? What is it going to do for us on an emotional, mental level if we do? Remember also that this takes practice. So please keep your expectations reasonable of yourself. And just remember that, we're not here in this practice to put these challenges in our pathway to give us something to fall over. That's not the intention. It's just, can we maybe explore our own hidden depths, our hidden strengths, because we have got this within us. It's all there. All right, my darlings. So let's think about slowly coming up and peeling away from the floor. And there might be a little bit of relief here. It might take a little while to even want to come out of that position. And half of the enjoyment is the coming out and is the release. So maybe just take your hands behind you onto the floor, maybe bend the knees and just rock the knees from side to side in a little bit of a window wipery action. Okay. All right, so we're going to come forwards now. We're going to take the back bend a little bit more deeply. So we'll come into seal pose and then potentially, into Sphinx pose and then potentially into seal. You might want your blanket in front of you. We've done this in a lot of variations over the last few weeks. So there's always, if I just talk you through them very briefly, the essence of the pose of Sphinx pose is to be elbows underneath shoulders, propping yourself up, legs nice and straight, toes untucked. For more height, put things underneath your elbows if you want a slightly deeper back bend. For support, you could put blanket or bolster just underneath hips, for instance, because this takes some of the pressure, the intensity out of it. But you could also use that extra height to give you extra lift, for instance. Play around with where your feet are. So feet together might give you a higher up the back or a more kind of complete back bend going on, whereas feet apart might make this a little bit more localized into the very bottom of the spine, into the lumbar. So explore feet together and feet apart. Explore how high you are going to be propped up. I quite like having my elbows on the bolster because it gives that little bit of extra height without having to have the arms too straight. But if you feel that you would rather go for the deeper back bend and you want to come into seal, you turn your fingers to point out towards the sides, and the hands come up, the arms are straight. Now, obviously, the closer your hands are towards the line of your hips, the deeper the back bend is going to be. The further the hands are away, the more mild the back bend will be. But wherever you're at, you should be feeling this a little bit in your shoulders, okay? So shoulders here are going to be taking the weight of your upper body. And so it is okay. We want them to do a little bit of weight bearing. We want that to be the case, especially for women. We tend to find that we're a lot weaker in our upper body, our shoulders, than perhaps men naturally are. So that's why you see all these like wonderful yoga teachers doing, these male yoga teachers doing all these fantastic arm balances and lots of floaty type stuff and handstands and things, and it's because they're naturally very strong in that upper part of the body. Okay, so you could let your chin fall towards your chest. If you are in Sphinx pose and you want to bend your elbows and rest your head in your hands, that's okay. If you want to use a brick underneath you to rest your forehead onto, that is also okay. But just see if you can stay in the lifted element of the back bend, and this should feel intense. There shouldn't be pain, but you're likely to feel an intensity of compression in the lumbar area of the spine, particularly depending upon where your ankles are, whether they're together or far apart. And just think about keeping the chest slightly lifted. Let the shoulders almost slump a little bit, so you can let the shoulders rise up towards the ears, that's okay. But just think about where or how you change your shape and what effect that has. So we've done a little bit of work tonight with the neck and flexing forwards. We then work the upper part of the back into a very mild extension for the thoracic spine. And now we're really working deeply into the lumbar area of the spine, which naturally curves in this position and makes this shape. But we are putting extra kind of forces through the lumbar vertebra. And so we're just helping to maintain the density, the strength in the bony structures at the bottom of the spine. We hear all sorts of kind of horror stories, or at least I do in my line of work, with people talking about their backs crumbling and their vertebra doing this, that and the other. And ultimately it's because somewhere in their spine they've suffered from a misalignment, which they probably have had for years and years, and somewhere else in their spine has had to take the brunt of this, had to pick up the pieces, and so is therefore overworked or has not worked hard enough. And generally we need to keep working. The spine likes to move in a whole myriad of ways, and if we maintain its movement, if we maintain its flexibility and its strength, then we will be left with a really healthy back and a healthy body for many years, potentially. Okay. So if you want to come down, you're very welcome to. If you want to stay up for one more minute, if you want to change your position slightly, then please go for it. Just see what this feels like. Where do you want to take your attention when you're in this pose? I'm going to shut up for the next minute and just let you be with your breath. Okay. And so then gently easing yourself carefully back down and just laying down, letting your spine sink and settle and the muscles in your lower back release, maybe making a pillow for your head to rest on and just gently wiggling the hips from side to side. Then you're not going to change your position too much, but I'd like you to turn your head to one side and just rest that arm on the floor by your side, and the other arm you're going to take down long towards your hip. Whatever way you turned your head, I want you to bring that knee up gently beside you. So it's a bit like you kind of lying down in your bed, maybe you've got your arm tucked under your pillow, it's that sort of position. And just see if while you're here, You can surrender all of your weight into the mat and become extremely heavy. And then we'll turn the head and take the arms and legs into the same shape on the other side. Just turning and letting the back release. Especially if you were very intense in that previous back bend and you just need to give your body the time to release and to soften out, because that's just as important a part of the practice as being in the pose. Take 2 more breaths here, please. And then can you ease yourself up onto your hands and knees and gently, not being too fast with any of your movements, so being very gentle, very slow, but maybe just bringing the chin towards the chest and rounding the spine gently into a cat stretch. And then you can drop your bottom backwards towards your heels. And then while you're here, if you're able to let your head rest on the floor, go for it. But if you need a bit of extra height there, put a block or something underneath. You're going to make fists. And if it's comfortable, I want you to put the fists just at the bottom of your tummy, just sort of below your navel. And there's like that little space where the hip bones are. I just want the hands to be slightly inside of that. So you're just creating a little bit less space for your tummy, and you're resting your head down low. Obviously, if this is uncomfortable for you for any reason whatsoever, and you don't want to do it, please just rest. You can have your hands for a pillow, you could have your arms forwards. But I want you to meet this little bit of resistance here, where your breath would naturally be going into your belly, and just see whether you can then explore some space for your breath moving into the back of your spine. So instead of your belly moving with your breath, can you breathe into your back body? Can you breathe into your kidneys? Can you breathe into your low back? Just put some space and some release there. Okay. And then gently lifting up. And we're going to spend a couple of minutes in a twist. I'm going to do a twist on each side, and that will almost bring us to the end of the practice. I hope you haven't got anywhere to rush off to, so we might run over by a couple of minutes. So what I want you to do is sit sideways on, and you don't have to use any props for this. Normally we would call this tiger in the tree or twisting tiger. And sometimes I would put a bolster down on the mat in front of you to roll over. If you have a bolster and you want to use it for this pose, if you're familiar with twisting tiger, we have done it before in the last couple of weeks, so it should be familiar for some of you. However, if you don't have a bolster or you don't want to use one tonight, then you're just sitting, so your top thigh is parallel with the long or the short edge at the top of your mat. And you're then going to just turn towards the mat and you're going to lay down. And if you can turn your gaze in the opposite direction to your knees, then go for it. But if you need to come down initially and just rest, I've got my arms in a cactus position because that feels quite nice. And if you need to have your nose in the same direction as the knees, then go for that too. But if you are able to come into the pose, and you're going to need to facilitate quite a big twist here. So if you haven't got that freedom of movement, then something underneath you, like a cushion or two, is going to be helpful if you don't have a bolster. But if you can turn your head to the side, you might need to experiment with arm positions, okay? So don't feel that you've got to have your arms in a cactus, bent elbow position. You might need to have one arm down by your side on the opposite side to the knees. But you're just exploring being in a lying twist. And for some of you, this will be heavenly, okay? And if it is, then stay in that heavenly mind place or body place and enjoy. And if it isn't heavenly, I don't want to say hellish, but if it isn't quite as heavenly as you would hope it to be, then stay in that place too and explore what it is. Why is it that these sensations are creeping up? Is it because you feel very vulnerable in a sort of sprawled out fashion across the floor? Often if you've practiced this with me in the normal yin class and we've had the props underneath us, and I always say this to you, the props give us security. They support us, and that's what we want them to do. We want them to support us not only physically, but they support us on an emotional level too. They enable us to feel very held and safe. And so if we're in this pose and we don't have those things, how do we feel? Does it make us feel awkward or slightly out of sorts? And is this something that we can continue to explore so that it becomes familiar? And so that when other things happen in our lives that leave us in this same sort of feeling place, we have got some tools to know how to cope. We will become resilient and we will be able to rely on our own resources, our own inner resources that will see us through. So you're just going to take maybe 4 or 5 more breaths here. And then when you're ready, you're going to carefully peel yourself away from the floor, coming all the way up. Maybe turning to face the other end of your mat if you wish to, or just sweeping your legs around so that you're still facing the same end. And remember, you want the thigh roughly parallel with the top edge of the mat, and you can have the legs in any kind of configuration that works for you. And there is a sense that you need to lengthen and lift away from the seat, away from the pelvis. Because otherwise, if you're hunched and you're collapsing into the spine, you're going to lose the potential for rotation. So if you start by sitting up nicely and keep all that lovely space in your lower back that you found in the Sphinx or seal pose previously, and then you're rolling yourself around, and it's almost as though how far can you get to turn around to look maybe backwards towards the feet that are behind you. And it might be that you roll off of your mat, and I know a lot of yoga teachers that practice with two mats next door to each other for that very reason. So if you find yourself kind of inching off of the mat, don't worry, just play around with your position and see whether you can find a comfortable place in which to be. And also, as ever, notice whether this side is the same as the previous side. Was it easier to rotate in this direction, or was it more challenging? Have you gone into a place of deliciousness? And can you kind of hang out there, have a little bit of a party, enjoy the breath and the softness and the relative satisfaction that there is? Or perhaps there's challenge. Can you sit with the challenge of the pose? Maybe you have a bit of both. Above all, can you breathe? Okay. So let's again take 4 or 5 more breaths here. Well done. Okay. So let's think about easing ourselves. Maybe just coming up gently, releasing the legs. And you might like just to sort of sit with the legs in a bent position and just hug the knees, letting the chin fall towards the chest. If you prefer, you could lie down and hug your knees in towards your chest. Okay. So then very gently, just bring yourself to lie down Bring the knees in towards you. Have a little squeeze in with the knees. And then loosely holding the knees, have a rock from side to side. And just for a moment, before we come round and up to sit, I'd like you to release the legs and slide the feet down and away from you towards the corners of your mat. Turn your toes out to the sides, bring your arms to rest down by your sides and turn your palms up. And then let the back of the body spread and maybe have a wriggle around, do what you need to do. And then take notice. Notice of whatever there is, whatever sensations, whatever new experiences are going on, maybe in your lower back, maybe in your middle back, maybe in your belly. Just take some soft yet deep breaths. And I don't want to take away all of the pleasure of what you're about to receive. And I'm thinking, you know, that moment when you get into bed, the wonderful thing about practicing like this is that relatively soon you can get into bed and you can go back to experiencing this lovely lying feeling of space and release and softness through the body. So I don't want to detract from that too much, nor do I want you to get too comfy and cozy on the floor and for you to fall off to sleep again, or fall off to sleep at all. So just take another breath or two here and just feel the spine sinking and all that lovely tension releasing from the shoulders into the earth. Let the earth absorb it all up for you because you don't need it anymore. And then we can bend the knees and we can roll ourselves over to one side and we're going to come up to sit. So just like at the start, sit comfortably, whether that be cross-legged or kneeling, whatever is good for you. Well done. And so we will bring our practice to a close by taking the fingertips to the floor next to us, taking a nice big breath in and bringing the arms, palms together above the head, and exhaling, bringing the hands down to rest in front of the heart. Just close the eyes, relax your shoulders, soften your jaw. And if it's not going to disturb anybody else within your house, I would like us to share a single chant of Om together to bring the practice to a close and settle the energy within your body. So take a nice big breath in. And then bow your chin towards your chest and keep your eyes closed. Remember that little flickering flame of light that burns brightly inside your heart and how you have nourished the flame with your practice this evening. Remind yourself of things that you feel grateful for today. And then we'll bring the practice to a close by thinking about tomorrow, the day to come. And how are you going to make tomorrow great? Even if today hasn't been fantastic, tomorrow is a fresh new start where we can begin again. Just like the end of our practice when we come out of our Shavasana, even brief though it was. So let's take another breath in and open your eyes, lift your head. Well done. Namaste to you all. Good. Okay, well done. So, over here, just like normal, let's turn this.